Gold Roger, the king of pirates, had amassed enormous wealth, fame, and power. Before his execution, he announced to the crowd that all his treasure was hidden in a certain place, sparking the world's entry into the great age of piracy. 11 years later, a stubborn and grumpy boy tries to impress his idol, a pirate named Shanks with red hair. He arrives at Fuchsia village to rest along with his crew of pirate roaches. The boy, nicknamed Luffy, attempts to recruit them. Though he pretends to be strong and independent, Luffy isn't entirely so, as evidenced by the scar he inflicts on himself during an attack by Shanks. When bandits led by Aguma assault the village tavern, Shanks doesn't react, disappointing Luffy. Meanwhile, Luffy gains strange powers after eating something forbidden, the Gum Gum Devil Fruit, and loses his ability to swim forever. A few days later, however, Aguma returns to the tavern. This time, Luffy reacts. The boy is kidnapped, and this time Shanks, along with his pirate crew, comes to fight the bandits. However, the leader of the bandits disappears into the sea, carrying Luffy with him. Once again, it's Shanks who saves Luffy from the same fate when a huge beast called the King of the Sea attacks the boat where Aguma is devoured. Still sitting still, Shanks saves Luffy with just a glance. This move, however, has consequences, and before leaving the village, Shanks gives his precious hat to Luffy, telling him that when he becomes a great pirate, he must return it. 10 years later, in the present, Luffy is 17 years old and ready to become a pirate. Thus begins his long journey. Luffy meets a boy named Kobe, who dreams of becoming a marine. To prevent this, Luffy frees him from his condition as a galley slave under the dreadful Alvida. After helping him escape his chains, Luffy takes Kobe with him to Shelltown. There, he meets Zoro, the dreaded pirate tied up and held still in the courtyard of the base of the infamous Captain Morgan. Luffy decides that Zoro will be the first member of his crew. He helps the pirate free himself, and Zoro decides to follow him, becoming a pirate to ensure his dream of becoming the greatest swordsman in the world is never put at risk. Behind this lies a promise made to a childhood friend who died prematurely. Together, they defeat Morgan. Freeing Shelltown from evil and allowing Kobe to stay and grow, Luffy and Zoro continue their journey, landing in Orangetown. Luffy meets Nami, a thief who steals only from pirates and dreams of navigating and drawing the map of the entire world. She deceives him by forming an alliance that is about to betray him to Buggy the Clown, a pirate who holds the village under his control. What she actually plans is to give Luffy to Buggy, blaming him for ordering her to steal the map of the dangerous Grand Line. To save his captain, Zoro intervenes. In the chaos, Luffy manages to free himself and fight against Buggy, but not before teaching a lesson to his henchmen, who disturb Choo-Choo, a little girl protecting the shed of her late dead father. Meanwhile, Zoro takes care of another henchman, Kabaji. Together, they destroy the Day of Bugs, freeing Orangetown from its cancer once and for all. Nami decides to join Luffy and Zoro temporarily, declaring it openly. Now, Luffy has his navigator. After meeting a man named Gaiman stuck in a barrel, the team arrives at Sherop Village, intending to refuel and find a ship. There, they meet Usopp, a boy who greets them in a bizarre way and introduces them to his friend Kaya, who owns a ship. Kaya, however, is ill and lives in a villa with a strict but gloomy caretaker named Creador, who takes care of her since the death of her parents. His name is Creador, and like Usopp, he is part of the household, but Usopp is the light in Kaya's life. He spends a lot of time with her, telling invented stories to make her smile. Usopp brings the others to the villa, but a fight breaks out between him and Creador in front of Kaya. Shortly after, Usopp and Luffy chat, and the latter discovers that Usopp is the son of Yasopp, a member of Shanks' crew. Kaya overhears a conversation involving an unknown man planning to kill her and take over her wealth, making it look like a big accident. But the two notice Usopp and Luffy. The latter is hypnotized by Django, the man Creador was talking to, while Usopp runs to warn the village of the imminent arrival of the pirates. However, no one believes him because he always had the habit of launching false alarms. Usopp decides to talk to Kaya, but she doesn't believe him. So the only chance Usopp has left is Luffy, Zoro, and Nami, who decide to help him, trying to thwart the plan of the fearsome Captain Kuro, Creador's true identity. Kaya then learns the truth from Mary, who was silenced by Kuro after discovering everything. The team tries to fight Kuro and Echo before they can invade the village. During the fight, we learn that Kuro had sealed the news of his death with a marine, giving him false glory for having killed him. That marine was Morgan Manodasha. From that day on, Kuro planned for 3 long years the moment he would take Kaya's wealth. Meanwhile, Kaya decides to go to Usopp to apologize and face Kuro directly. To escort her are Carrot, Onion, and Pepper, 3 children who have always seen Usopp as an idol. After a hard fight, Luffy manages to defeat Kuro. Zoro frees himself from the Nyaban, and Usopp sinks Django with his ability as a sniper, saving Kaya. To thank them for saving her life and the village, Kaya gives the group her beautiful caravan, the Going Merry. Usopp leaves with the others, while Kaya stays with Shirop to wait for him. In the end, it's Merry who tells the truth behind Usopp's lies. As a child, he told his dying mother a story to make her believe that her pirate husband had returned to take them away to sea with him. Our crew continues their journey and creates the Jolly Roger. They meet Johnny and Yosaku, taggers who had worked with Zoro in the past. Altogether, they arrive at Barati, a restaurant on the sea. There, a Navy officer named Full Body tries to sink them with artillery, in vain. But Luffy causes damage to the premises, and the boss, Zeph, challenges him to work there to pay for the damages. We meet Sanji, a cook and sometimes a flirt at the bar, who slaps Full Body for wasting food. Meanwhile, hungry and half-dead, Luffy shows up at the restaurant, and Sanji makes his appetite known. Luffy invites Sanji to join the party, but the cook refuses for an unspecified reason. Zeph fights with him to kick him out of the restaurant so he can pursue his dream. But nothing to do. Don Krieg accompanied by Jin, the man that Sanji had just starved. The pirate creates chaos, and in the end Zeph decides to cook for him and his men. Meanwhile, Nami, for unforeseen reasons, abandons the secret and leaves alone, and the strongest swordsman in the world, Dracul Mihawk, appears. In virtue of his dream, Zoro challenges him and loses honorably, being seriously injured. But the clash between Krieg and Ars for the defense of the Barati begins. Sanji fights Pearl and so begins the flashback. The little Sanji, 9-year-old cook, is driven away for his dream of finding the All Blue, a sea where all the fish in the world live. But the passenger ship he finds is attacked by pirate Zeph Paiderasi. Following a shipwreck, Zeph stays alone on an abandoned island. The pirate divides the food left with the child. 70 days later, the two are malnourished and Sanji returns to Zeph to have more food. But he discovers that the pirate had kept only the treasures, leaving all the food to the child. In order not to die of hunger, the pirate had eaten his own leg after having cursed it. He says that he made this choice because Sanji has his own dream, so he has to live to carry it on. In the present, Sanji decides to take it seriously and fight for the one who saved his life. But Pearl is beaten by Jean, who first beats Sanji for pride, and then gives up for gratitude. Luffy fights hard with Krieg and eventually defeats him. Sanji decides to accept Luffy's invitation, but during the farewell to Zeph, after the latter tells him lovingly not to get cold, Sanji cries out and thanks the one who owes his life. In the northeast of East Blue, a pirate dominates the waters. His name is Arlong and is so powerful that he can also challenge a marine captain named Nezumi. Our team arrives in Coco Village and after a series of contradictory actions of Nami, who saves Zoro and Usopp after staging the death of the latter, they meet Nojiko, Nami's sister, who tells them the truth. As children, Nojiko and Nami had been adopted by an ex-pirate woman, Belmer. Belmer took care of the children, though they were in poverty until the day Arlong's gang invaded Coco Village and started to ask for tribute. Belmer got to 100,000 berries and to save his children, sacrificed himself. Arlong killed him in front of Nami and Nojiko. From that day, Nami decided to work for Arlong so that she could go on foreign trips to steal treasures and collect 100 million berries, which would be used to buy the village and free it from Arlong's tyranny. But in the present, Arlong doesn't want to negotiate with Nami and sends Nezumi, who kidnaps all her wealth. Nami loses her head, but our people help her, fighting against Arlong and his crew. Usopp defeats Pichu with his cunning, Zoro beats Akon, and Sanji massacres Kurobi, while Luffy takes care of Arlong, both him and everything that represented his power over Nami. Kokoyashi is a free village just like Nami, who chooses to return to the Mugiwara to pursue her dream of drawing the world map. Meanwhile, Luffy earns a bounty of $30 million. Our team arrives at Logtown, while Mihawk goes to find Shanks on a certain island. But unexpectedly Bag and Alvida are there and have joined forces. Their goal is to capture Luffy, and they are about to succeed by executing the ship after capturing it. A lightning saves him before the decapitation, and our team flees from the island, followed by the Captain Smoker of the Navy. This last manages to hit Luffy, but is stopped by a man in a coat with a vicious scar on his face. Our team manages to escape and after re-epilogizing their dreams in the forest, they arrive at the Gemelli, where they meet a giant and an old man on a lost whale. The whale is called Laboon and is seriously injured because it hits its head on the mountain, desperate while waiting for the return of the Churma that left it there. Luffy saves it from the attack of two guys from an organization called Baroque Works, Mr. Nine and Ms. Wednesday. Then he makes a promise to the whale and continues his journey with his companions. The Mogis arrive at Whiskey Peak and there they are deceived by the inhabitants who try to make them drunk and then kill them. But Zoro holds the alcohol and kills them all. Igaram, the mayor who welcomed them, discovers himself to be the commander of the royal army of Alabasta undercover, and Ms. Wednesday is the Princess Vivi. While Igaram is apparently killed by the explosion of his ship, our people leave, and the ship receives the warning of the dangerous Miss All Sunday, who leaves them momentarily. Arrived at Little Garden, they meet two giants, Dory and Brogy. The two fight non-stop day and night for the honor of Elbaf. To pay to keep their lives, they are captured by Mr. Three and Miss Golden Week. The members of the Baroque Works are all barricaded by Luffy and the others. Dory and Brogy help our brothers to escape, but Nami gets a fever, and so the Mugiwara stop at Drum to look for a doctor. After a series of difficulties, an elderly woman, Dr. Kureya, with her assistant Tony Chopper, a queen of human abilities, heals Nami. But Drum's kingdom is threatened by the despotic Waypal, who in the past killed the crazy Dr. Iruluk, Chopper's mentor and adoptive father. Our guys forcefully expel Waypal, and Luffy manages to recruit Chopper as a doctor, who separates the tears from Dr. Kureya. Now we go to Alabasta. On our guys meet a guy who's up and make friends with him without knowing that he is Mr. Two from the Baroque Works. Arrived at Alabasta, Luffy immediately gets into trouble, interrupting the arrest of his brother Portgas Diaz by Captain Smoker. Meanwhile, the Baroque Works joins a lost bar to complete the conquest plan of the kingdom. A friend of Vivi, Katsa, is the leader of the rebels of the country. These latter hate the king for not taking any action to protect the country from the filth and for trying to bring the palace the famous dance powder that creates artificial rain, stealing it from the neighboring countries. They know that it's all a crocodile scheme. It caused him to commit suicide with his red sand to make the royal army and rebels destroy Vicenda and leave the country to him without getting their hands dirty. The fleet man traps our men and catches them in his casino, locking them all together with Smoker. But once Crocodile is away to save the situation, he is safe. Once everyone is gathered, Luffy reaches Crocodile and starts a fight with him, but the superiority of the fleet man is overwhelming, and Luffy loses. The Mugiwara are confronted with the various members of the Baroque Works. Chopper and Usopp beat Mr. Four and Miss Merry Christmas. Sanji beats Mr. Chu, and Zoro beats Mr. One. Nami beats Miss Doublefinger, and Luffy beats Crocodile, using water to hit him as he is sand. But Luffy loses again, and Crocodile faces Miss All Sunday and Recobras, the undergrounds of the castle, where Ponlif, which indicates the location of an ancestral weapon, Pluton, is found. The mission is completed, but without a response for Crocodile, who tries to kill Nico Robin, the true name of Miss All Sunday. Luffy comes again to challenge him, and this time the Crocodile is soundly defeated by Luffy's discovery, his own blood as liquid to weaken the sand. Koza had discovered the truth, but it was too late to stop the revolt. It's the end of the reign after so much time. Alabasta is free, the merit is given to Smoker, and Luffy and Zoro still receive an increase in size. 100 million for the captain and 60 million for Marimo. Our guys offer Vivi a place in Siorma, but she opts to stay in Alabasta as a princess. Meanwhile, there is an infiltrator on board. It's Nico Robin who asks to join Siorma. And now, let's go. Our journey continues in panic. Between giants and ships falling from the sky, they finally arrive in Jaya. There they meet individuals not really hospitable and for good, like beautiful Mila Yena and a certain guy who talks about how important dreams are for a man. But they also know of Mont Blanc Cricket, descendant of Nolan, a famous and justified explorer a few centuries before for having lied about the existence of a golden city. Thanks to the help of Cricket, the Moogs managed to reach the famous Sky Island, Skypeia. Our friends know Cones and Pagaya, which allow them to perlustrate the area, but soon understand that the island is threatened by a tyrant. In the name of justice with Canis and Pagaya, our people decide to defeat Enel, but before they fight him, a series of challenging trials inside a narrow and bizarre forest occurs. Meanwhile, the Shandora from the area challenge Enel for the reconquest of their land. Sanji and Luffy meet Satori, one of Enel's officers, and defeat him. We discover the intent of Enel to destroy the island and flee with his bow to the world Fatato, the moon. But Luffy comes to face him, as well as his natural enemies since he is the rubber and Enel is the fruit of electricity. We learn the truth about Nolan's lyre, explorer who found Jaya and brought a little progress there, healing the island from the fever of wood and the ignorance of natives. Over time, Nolan gained the trust of Kalgra, the chief warrior, who showed him Shandora, the city full of riches. Their relationship was strained when Nolan knocked down the sacred tree in the area, but Kalgra forgave him when he realized that it was the trees that spread the epidemic. The two made peace, and Nolan promised his friend to come back one day. But when he came back, half of the island was gone because it had been pushed up from the current, and Nolan was taken for a liar by his king. In the present, Luffy finally manages to reach Enel, defeating him soundly and playing the golden bell of Shandora, which was hidden in the skies for centuries. The sound of the bell raged until Cricket, who realized that justice for Nolan had just been done. After surviving a deadly game called Devi Back Fight, our people meet Admiral Aokiji, who lets them go, but warns them about the problems they will encounter if they still protect a person like Nico Robin. But here they come to the Water City, Water 7, famous also for its excellent carpenters. Our crew arrives there hoping to repair the Going Merry, but given the damage to the keel, they realize it is impossible. Among all, the one who takes the news is Usopp, who is also pestered and robbed of the money from the gang by the survivors of the infamous Frankie house. Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper avenge him, but still do not recover the money. Usopp, however, does not accept reality, and, intent on not changing ships, he quarrels with Luffy and abandons the crew. Meanwhile, some agents take Robin away from the Straw Hats to complete the realization of a secret plan. That plan will end with the eruption of Robin and these agents into the House of Iceberg, mayor of the city, to steal the blueprints of the Pluton, a powerful battleship capable of destroying entire islands with its cannonballs. The agents leave unnoticed. They are members of the CP9, a murderous organization, and their components are nothing more than citizens who operated undercover. Lucy, Kaku, Bluno, and Khalifa. Luffy and Zoro try to fight them but are defeated in a few moments. Now the CP9 sets its sights on Cutty Flam, the real identity of Frankie from the Frankie house. The mentor of the latter was Tom, president of the naval company Tom's Workers, who in the past had built important ships such as the Pirate King's Gold Roger. To atone for that crime, Water 7's government sentenced him. With Frankie, Iceberg, and Tom, they were assaulted through the creation of the Sea Train, but a diabolical plan by Spandam had brought Tom to declare himself guilty again, staging a naval accident with Frankie's help to damage the Navy. Following an incident, Cutty Flam was presumed dead but changed his identity to Frankie, occupying the lower parts of the city. Sanji, who had beaten Robin, discovers the truth. The woman had agreed to be tried for her past in exchange for leaving the crew alone. Meanwhile, Frankie had been captured. Sanji gets on the train heading to the prison of Ani's lobby and challenges the CP9 while his companions try to reach him. Robin finally reaches the Judicial Island. Luffy fights with Bluno, annihilating the enemy's technique called Rakashiki. Through Gear Second, Luffy pumps his blood, initiating a natural process that makes him stronger. In front of Spandam's operation, Robin understands what they are willing to do for her. On Luffy's orders, Sageking, the king of snipers, sets the government building on fire. The Straw Hats just fought 176 soldiers to save a single companion. But Robin still can't accept it, and here we learn about her past. Small and alone, Robin ate a devil fruit in her youth, and this led her to be marginalized by her fellow citizens on the island of Ohara. Thanks to Professor Clover, she became passionate about archaeology, but the study of the Void Century was, and still is, prohibited. At the time, Robin was taken care of by Saul, a giant shipwrecked on Ohara. Soon he realized that the island was being targeted by the Navy, and he himself was a vice admiral who opposed what would happen shortly after. The sending of several warships that would have raised the land of those daring to investigate the dark history. In that sad occasion, Robin said goodbye to her mother, as she had to say goodbye to Saul when the latter tried to save her from that hell, sacrificing himself under the attacks of the Vice Admiral Aokiji. This last one let Robin go, who since then has had a bounty of 79 million berries. In the present, Robin has finally accepted the idea of living and being saved. Our team decides to face the CP9 to put an end to everything and recover the key to Nico Robin's handcuffs. Sanji initially faces Khalifa, but then defeats Jabra. Nami fights Khalifa, while Zoro beats Kaku. Frankie sets up a diversion, while Chopper runs desperately to defeat Kumadori. He eats 3 rumble balls and takes on a monstrous form without conscience, known since then as Monster Chopper. Luffy manages to reach Lucy, winning after a tough and evenly matched battle. but Spandam had wrongly activated a buster call, so our people are surrounded. Their rescue comes back unexpectedly. It is none other than the Going Merry, ready to accompany them on their last journey, far from that bloody battlefield. For sure, our team decides to say goodbye to the Merry with a Viking funeral and a lot of tears, while they are ready to leave with a new shipwright, the carpenter Frankie. Our team receives new bounties: 50 berries for Chopper, 16 million for Nami, 30 for Sogeking, 44 for Frankie, 77 for Sanji, 80 for Robin, 120 for Zoro, and 300 million for Luffy. The journey continues aboard the Thousand Sunny, a new ship built by Frankie. Usopp apologizes and returns to the crew. Our men flee from Vice Admiral Garp, who throws cannonballs at them. Meanwhile, Barbano's ace faces Teach, who had left the Whitebeard pirates after killing a commander. The clash has a winner, but we still don't know who. Our team continues the journey and hits a ghost ship with a small skeleton on board. His name is Brook. Luffy invites him to join the crew, but this last one refuses because his shadow has been stolen by someone, and if he exposes himself to sunlight, he would turn to dust. Luffy then offers himself to recover his shadow. The Straw Hats then reach the Ghost Island, Thriller Bark. They split up and begin to deal with strange creatures and trees with faces. The atmosphere is creepy and scary, but Nami, Usopp, and Chopper manage to reach a castle. There, they are welcomed by Dr. Hogback, Chopper's counterpart in medical science. Luffy reaches the castle differently and is attacked by a zombie. A man explains to our people how things work. A man named Moria steals the shadows and seizes the bodies of the victims, preventing them from returning to their daily lives. It's Gecko Moria from the Seven Warlords. We meet Absalom and Perona, two of his officers. Luffy begins to spread chaos in the castle, but without anyone noticing, the shadows of Zoro are stolen. Frankie and Robin face a giant that puts them in trouble, but they are rescued by Brook, who then heads to face the corpse of a legendary swordsman from Wano, Reuma, who is subsequently defeated by Zoro, who receives his sword, the Black Shusui. Meanwhile, the island is visited by Bartholomew Kuma, another member of the Fleet of the Seven. Luffy was defeated by Moria, but he recovers after having absorbed the shadows of 100 people, ready to face Moria as Nightmare Luffy. Our team finally manages to defeat Oars, cooperating again with Luffy, who delivers the final blow. Moria, in full hysterics, injures an exaggerated number of shadows and loses control, then being easily defeated by Luffy. The danger seems to have passed, but Kuma appears. With his attack, Ursa's shock creates devastation. The only ones left standing are Zoro and Sanji. With his powers, Kuma transfers Luffy's exhaustion into Zoro's body to test him. Then he leaves, leaving Zoro in a pitiful state. Let's talk about Brook's past. She was part of the Rumber Pirates, the crew who fell with Laboon, the whale. Because of an epidemic, the crew died member after member, including Brook. But the devil fruit activated by him gave him a second life. Lost in the fog, his soul wandered until his body decomposed. Brook then joins the crew with the goal of meeting Laboon again one day. She goes on, and the Straw Hats meet a mermaid, helping her save a friend who turns out to be Arlong's descendant. Once the situation is resolved, our men arrive in Skypeia, and Arlong warns them never to anger the world nobles, or it will be the end. Our men meet Shaki, a woman who knows Rayleigh, who takes care of coating ships with resin to face the underwater currents. In Skypeia, there are other renowned pirates: Capone, Bonnie, Hawkins, Apu, Kid, Drake, Yarouge, Killer, and Law. Together with Luffy, they are the Supernovas, a group of pirates who have already surpassed 100 million before entering the New World. Meanwhile, while Zoro risks angering a noble, the Siren of Kami is kidnapped to be sold to a slave ship. Our team reaches the House of Auctions to stop them, but while they are testing us, a celestial dragon shoots at Arlong. Luffy gets angry and hits the noble Charlos with a violent punch in the face. To save Kami, the former captain of Roger's crew, Rayleigh, appears. Because of Luffy's actions, the Navy sends an admiral and a glamorous battleship to the island. Admiral Kizaru arrives, who first humiliates the other supernovas and then goes a step away from exterminating the Straw Hats. Rayleigh intervenes, but suddenly Kuma appears, who uses his powers on the Straw Hats, scattering them across unknown islands. It is the epilogue: the darkness has been divided. Luffy ends up on Amazon Lily, an island of only women. At first, he is treated well, but then he meets Boa Hancock, the ruler of the Kuja tribe, warriors of the place and a member of the Seven Warlords. The woman notices Luffy's innocence and tells him about her past as a slave to the nobles, along with her sisters, and their liberation through an adventurer called Fisher Tiger. She falls in love with him and helps him reach Impel Down when Luffy discovers that Ace is about to be executed by the Navy. Once there, he manages to infiltrate the prison thanks to Boa's help and starts causing chaos on the first level with Buggy the Clown. They move to level 2 and meet Mr. 3. After another chaotic event, they reach level 3. While we get to Jinbei, floating or locked in the same cell as Ace, Luffy separates from Mr. 3 and Buggy and unites forces with Mr. 2 at level 3. But to meet Luffy at level 4, the director of the prison, Magellan, defeats him by poisoning him with his powers and locks him at level 5. Mr. 2, thanks to his powers, deceives the guards, frees Buggy and Mr. 3, and heads to level 5 to save Luffy. Once he frees him, they fall to the ground after having fought everything and everyone. The two are brought. They are brought to the so-called level 5.5, where they meet Emporio Ivankov, who guarantees Luffy's survival with a hormonal treatment that will shorten his life by 10 years. Luffy recovers and plans the escape together with Ivankov, who we discover is one of the commanders of the Revolutionary Army. To escape, Luffy unites forces with Jinbei and Crocodile, as well as Titch with his men. After a brief confrontation with Magellan, they are saved thanks to an antidote provided by Shiryu, a former prison officer who joins Titch as a pirate. Mr. 3 sacrifices himself by staying in prison to open a large gate. At Marineford, Ace is ready to be executed, and Sengoku reveals to the whole world the reason for the execution. Ace is Roger's son. From the depths emerges the Moby Dick, Whitebeard's ship. The Navy deploys the 3 admirals and the fleet of the 7 warlords. Whitebeard begins to create devastation through the powers of his fruit, originating earthquakes upon earthquakes. Meanwhile, Luffy and the other fugitives from Impel Down arrive. In the chaos of the war, Boa Hancock joins Luffy, betraying the government, while the Navy is led by Saint Omari and the pacifistas. But suddenly, Squardo, believing he is under Whitebeard's orders, stabs the latter with his sword. It is a mistake. Akaino had made Squardo believe that the war was planned on a table and that Whitebeard had saved the lives of his men to save Ace. Crocodile saves Ace by preventing an execution in extremis, and when Marco, the first commander of Whitebeard, tries to free Ace by flying toward the gallows, he is knocked to the ground with a punch from Garp the hero, who is doing his duty as a marine. Whitebeard suffers a heart attack, and Hyken takes advantage of it to shoot a deadly blow to his chest, while Marco is trampled by Kizaru. Luffy prevents another execution attempt involuntarily using his gear second, then heads toward the gallows. He stands in front of Garp, but the latter cannot stop him for reasons of the heart. While Kizaru continues to fight Whitebeard, Luffy reaches the gallows and finally frees Ace, eluding Sengoku. Whitebeard chooses to sacrifice himself to allow Ace and the others to escape, but when Akaino insults him, Ace returns to fight against the Admiral. Ace is defeated by a magma attack from Akaino and loses his life in front of his brother. From the shock, Luffy loses consciousness. Jinbei carries him away, while Whitebeard engages in a brief fight with Akaino, temporarily knocked out but suffering serious damage to his abdomen and brain. During the war, Blackbeard, alias Teach, infiltrated Impel Down, taking advantage of the trust gained thanks to Ace, and recruited the worst criminals from level 6. Newgate goes one step further in trying to kill Teach, while the latter inflicts the final blow on Yonko, who dies remaining standing. In an unknown way, Teach steals the powers of the Gura Gura no Mi, and the war resumes. Sengoku restrains Teach and the others. From the ocean comes the Heart Pirates, captained by Trafalgar Law, who remove the cuffs. The war is interrupted by the pleas of Kobe, who, after a monologue about justice, claims the massacre, being killed by Akaino after being labeled as a deserter. Kobe becomes an admiral, and Shanks arrives, decreeing the end of the war. Luffy wakes up in Amazon Lily and, after reflecting on his childhood with Ace and Sabo, another brother apparently killed at a young age by a celestial dragon, he realizes he is still weak. Jinbei lifts him up and makes him understand that he still has his friends from the Straw Hats, so Luffy decides to see them again, but not before becoming stronger. Luffy heads to Marineford to leave a message to his companions through photos in the newspaper, after which he trains with Rayleigh while the others improve their skills on the islands where they ended up after the disbandment. The message is clear: let's meet again in 2 years. After 2 years, the crew reunites in Sabaody, and once again faces Sentamaru and the pacifistas, but now they are much stronger and manage to get out without any difficulty. To their surprise, Frankie tells the gang that it was ironic luck that allowed Sunny to be protected for 2 years in Sabaody. After a series of misadventures, they manage to reach the island, where they are welcomed by Cammy. Meanwhile, we meet Hody Jones and his new gang of fishermen pirates. They dominate in contrast to the lower parts of the kingdom, and Neptune, the sovereign of the kingdom, invites the Straw Hats to the palace. There, Luffy meets Princess Shirahoshi, forced to live in seclusion because a new fishman named Vanderdecken 9 is after her. Based on a prediction by a certain Madame Shirley, who says that Luffy will destroy the island, the Straw Hats are attacked by Neptune's army and arrested. Luffy offers to accompany Shirahoshi outside, protecting her, and they head to the Sea Forest, where Jinbei is visiting the tomb of the deceased Queen Otohime. The new fishermen pirates assault the royal palace while Luffy protects Shirahoshi after her cover is blown. The group reunites with part of the Straw Hats, and together they meet Jinbei, who explains that the kingdom was a victim of discrimination in the past. Peace arrived when Newgate sold the island, apart from a flashback set 16 years ago. Queen Otohime was loved by everyone and often left the palace to talk to the citizens, sometimes persuading them to commit crimes. The leader of the lower classes, Fisher Tiger, became an adventurer and became known worldwide for having freed slaves and more joys. Back in the lower levels, he freed slaves and nuns to form the fearsome Sun Pirates. While Queen Otohime fought to bring down cultural discriminations, 3 years later, the Sun Pirates brought home a child who escaped from Mori Joys, but when they arrived, the humans of that place betrayed that gesture and warned the Marines. At the point of death, Tiger refused to be saved by a transfusion of human blood. However, he realized that Otohime was right. To fight discrimination, you need to make racism unknown to future generations, and not create chaos or hatred with more hatred. But one day, unexpectedly, a celestial dragon arrives on the island. Otohime decides without hesitation to protect him from the wrath of the citizens and finally saves him by calming them down. Meanwhile, Shirahoshi was at the eye of the cyclone for having manifested the legendary power that allowed her to summon the King of the Sea. The celestial dragon and a knight of Asgard left frustrated, and Otohime accompanied him to the surface, staying there for a week. When she returned, she showed the people a letter signed by Mjasgard, which she had managed to persuade him to write, obtaining the long-awaited freedom of her kingdom. She even managed to get signatures from her own citizens, but one day someone burned the cauldron containing those signatures, and in the chaos generated, she was shot. But from that day on, the princes Fugaboshi, Ryahoshi, and Mamboshi committed themselves to their mother's cause without ever surrendering. The clash between the humans began, but the Straw Hats are clearly superior. Meanwhile, the Arkanoi, a relic of the past, is moving toward Shirahoshi for Vanderdecken's plan. After a long fight, Luffy and the others defeat Hody and his gang, and the King of the Sea stops the Arlong-like ship before it is destroyed. Hody disappears, and Luffy is saved by a blood transfusion from Jinbei. Neptune speaks to Robin about the promise Joy Boy couldn't keep, and it turns out that the explanation of Shirahoshi's powers is based on the fact that she is one of the 3 ancient weapons, Poseidon. Meanwhile, Jinbei informs Luffy that Hinao is the new Great Admiral of the Navy after a deadly battle won against Aokiji, and Teach has become a Yonko after stealing some territories from Newgate. In the meantime, one of the 4 emperors, Big Mom, gets angry because she can't get the sweets that the island constantly provides in exchange for protection. Through the Den Mushi, Luffy takes responsibility for having eaten those sweets and declares war, intending to take the Rugu Kingdom under his protection. A suspicious signal on the horizon attracts our crew to the island of Punk Hazard. Once landed, Luffy and Zoro defeat a dragon, but the rest of the crew on the ship falls asleep due to a poisonous gas. Sanji, Nami, Frankie, and Chopper find themselves in a cell and meet a samurai named Kinemon, cut into pieces by a strange power. We learn that the island is half frozen and half infernal, due to the clash between Aokiji and Akaino. Smoker arrives on the island. He encounters Trafalgar Law, now a member of the 7 warlords. The two fight, but Law wins easily. We learn that the island is controlled by a former partner of Vegapunk, the evil Caesar clown. Chopper discovers that Caesar is drugging the children they saved for experiments. Meanwhile, Luffy forms an alliance with Law to kill a Yonko. To eliminate the intruders, Caesar releases a toxic gas. Law is in the meantime searching for a mysterious guy. With him is the Harpy Monet. Our crew is imprisoned and discovers that the enemies are all subjected to a broker of the black market, the Don Quixote fleet, led by Doflamingo. Our crew escapes and starts the counterattack. Luffy, meanwhile, encounters a dragon named Momonosuke in the underground. He is a child who has eaten a devil fruit. In the lab, Momonosuke is revealed to be a failed experiment of Dr. Vegapunk. Luffy and Momonosuke emerge from the underground, while Zoro and Tashigi confront Monet. We learn the purpose of Caesar Clown's experiments. He produces a gas called SAD, which, once processed in Doflamingo's factories, is transformed into Smile Devil fruits, artificial fruits that replicate the powers of Zoan-type devil fruits. Law and Smoker cooperate to defeat Virgo, while Trafalgar destroys the SAD production facility to declare war on Doflamingo. Luffy defeats Caesar, and Doflamingo heads to Punk Hazard. Momonosuke reunites with Kinemon, who had been searching for him on the island. The Yonko they aim to confront is Kaido. Meanwhile, our crew captures Caesar and Law forces Doflamingo to leave the Seven Warlords to retrieve Caesar, ensuring Kaido remains unaware of Doflamingo's betrayal. When our team is far from the island, Doflamingo attempts to kill Smoker but is stopped by Aokiji, who happens to be passing by. The next day, newspapers report Doflamingo's abandonment of the Seven Warlords, as well as the alliance between Luffy and Law. Law arranges a meeting with Doflamingo, who devises a plan to lure Luffy into a competition involving the Mera Mera no Mi, the fruit of the late Ace. Our crew arrives at Dressrosa, and Luffy participates in the Coliseum tournament to win it. The competition hosts pirates from all over the world. On the island, there are also Neo-Marines, fugitives, and CP0 agents. Frankie meets a talking bird that reveals the true story of Dressrosa. Law, disguised as Robin, arrives at Green Bit and encounters the Tontata, a group of very small individuals. It turns out that Doflamingo's abandonment of the Seven Warlords was a trap. He manipulated the CP0, and now both the fugitives and Doflamingo are confronting Law. At the tournament, Luffy meets Rebecca, who has a close connection with the soldier who spoke to Frankie. Meanwhile, Doflamingo reveals his secrets to Law. He is part of one of the families that founded the world government, the Donquixote family, and explains how he manipulated the CP0. Meanwhile, the losers of the tournament are locked underground and transformed into toys by a strange power. We discover that the soldier is Rebecca's father. 10 years earlier, Doflamingo became the king of Dressrosa by deceiving King Riku. As the battle unfolds, Doflamingo defeats Law and shoots him under Luffy's watch. At the same time, the ship of Big Mom arrives on the island. Sanji, Brook, Chopper, and Nami head to Zou to prepare the ship, separating from the others. Luffy meets Sabo at the Coliseum and discovers that he is still alive. Sabo continues the race in disguise. We are introduced to Tribole and Sugar, the latter being responsible for transforming citizens into toys. We also learn the story of Soldier, whose real name is Kairos. Law reveals to Luffy that he hates Doflamingo for killing his own brother, as well as his mentor, Corazon. Sabo wins the tournament and eats the Mera Mera no Mi, briefly fighting Fujitora. Luffy and Law reach the upper floor of the palace and confront Doflamingo. We learn that the Donquixote family was originally celestial but abandoned that status, and their family has suffered retaliation from the Neo World nobles. Doflamingo killed his father, but he didn't need his nobility. They tried to eliminate him because he knew about the national treasure of Marijois, capable of shaking the world, which is why Doflamingo targeted Law. His devil fruit grants him the ability to transfer pain to another person at the cost of his own life. We delve into Law's backstory. He arrived in Doflamingo's territory and worked for him, but Rocinante, Doflamingo's younger brother, tried to bring Law back on track and cure him of his disease. Rocinante was actually an undercover marine who provided intelligence about his brother to the Navy. With Corazon's help, Rocinante managed to administer an antidote to Law, which would have cured him through medical treatment. However, Doflamingo discovered everything thanks to Virgo, who infiltrated the Navy and killed Rocinante. Frankie, Caesar, Senor Pink, and Pika are defeated by the Straw Hats. Sabo humiliates Burgess, fights for the Mera Mera no Mi, and after a long battle, Luffy finally defeats Doflamingo. The fugitive apologizes to the people of Dressrosa, who are now safe, while Kid faces Kaido personally. The main fighters of the Coliseum form an alliance and create the Great Fleet of the Straw Hats. The journey continues. Departing from Dressrosa, our crew arrives at Zou and discovers that the island is located on the back of a massive, millennium-old elephant named Zunisha. Accompanying them are Kinemon, Momonosuke, and Kanjuro, friends saved by Doflamingo's Grimjaw at Dressrosa. Upon arrival, they notice a grotesque yet devastated landscape and are welcomed by the visitors, who explain that the devastation was caused by a man named Jack, who was searching for Raizo, a samurai from Wano. Zou is ruled by two kings, Inuarashi, the king of the day, and Nekamamushi, the king of the night. Meanwhile, we learn that Sanji has been taken away by Big Mom's pirates, allied with Capone Bega, for an arranged marriage orchestrated by his biological family, the Vinsmokes. The cook belongs to this noble family of assassins. Meanwhile, our crew discovers that Rizzo is indeed there and has been protected, thanks to the fact that Kinemon and the two sovereigns are part of the ancient Kozuki family. Momonosuke himself is the son of Kozuki Oden, the Lord of Curry. Together, they find Rizzo in the Balena, where there is also a new development. There are 4 road poneglyphs, each leading to a different destination. The intersection of the 4 paths leads to the final island, Laugh-Tale, where the One Piece is said to be. The other 3 road poneglyphs are scattered, one is with Kaido, another with Big Mom, and the last is hidden. We learn that the Kozuki clan built the poneglyphs, but the ability to read them was interrupted by the execution of Kozuki Oden by Orochi, the shogun of Wano, and Kaido. Kaido still controls Wano, and we discover that Oden was once a partner of Roger, uncovering the secrets of the world alongside Kinemon, Rizzo, Kanjuro, Inuarashi, and Nekamamushi, all loyal retainers of Oden. Luffy agrees to help them in their war against Kaido, but only after rescuing Sanji, Kinemon, and the others. Zou is attacked by Jack, but Zunisha can communicate telepathically, though only a few chosen individuals can hear him. In the past, Oden and Roger had this ability. In the present, Luffy and Momonosuke share this connection, but only Momonosuke can fully communicate with the elephant. He orders Zunisha to push Jack away with force, while the others stay behind to prepare for the journey to Wano. To head to Wano, Luffy, Nami, Chopper, Brook, Pedro, and Carrot travel to Whole Cake Island. After meeting Yanji and Reiju, the sea siblings of Sanji, our crew arrives in Tato Land, Big Mom's territory. There, they meet Pudding, Sanji's fiancé. Meanwhile, Jinbei, who was once part of Big Mom's crew, contemplates breaking the alliance. Our crew ends up in a seduction mission where they encounter Brule, one of Big Mom's homies. Brook and Pedro, meanwhile, work undercover to retrieve a copy of the road poneglyph. In the forest, Luffy engages in a fierce battle with Cracker, one of Big Mom's 3 sweet commanders. Sanji continues preparations for the wedding against his will, and we learn about his past. He and his brothers are the result of genetic experiments conducted by their father, Judge, and his team of scientists. However, Sanji was the only one to show signs of enhancement, which fueled his rage one day and led him to escape the prison-like environment imposed by his father. Luffy defeats Cracker, but when he learns about Sanji's predicament, he becomes deeply troubled. Sanji no longer intends to return, especially after his father threatens the Straw Hats by holding Zeph hostage. Luffy and Nami are captured, while Pedro and Brook reach the Room of Ropes. Sanji, along with Pudding, discovers the truth. The wedding is a plan for the extermination of the Vinsmoke family. To free Luffy and Nami, as well as Jinbei, Luffy decides to wait for Sanji to come to him, as he promised when they first met. True to his word, Sanji comes, bringing food. This becomes the plan for Sanji's liberation and the rescue of the Vinsmokes. Jinbei explains that Bega actually plans to kill Big Mom, so they form an alliance with him. During the wedding, when Pudding reveals her third eye, she is surprised by Sanji's beautiful reaction and hesitates to shoot him. The ceremony descends into chaos when Big Mom becomes enraged because the wedding cake has been destroyed. At one point, Brook appears out of nowhere and breaks a picture Big Mom cherishes, triggering her flashback. 63 years ago, Lenleen was abandoned by her parents and raised in a church named Mother Carmel, which cared for her and other children in the sheep house. However, Lenleen's voracious appetite caused problems for the giants, and Mother Carmel found herself on the verge of starvation. One day, for her birthday, Lenleen realized that to eat the sweets at the party, she devoured her friends and Mother Carmel, thus awakening her powers. In the present, Big Mom is still in shock from remembering Mother Carmel's abandonment, followed by the chaos caused by the Straw Hats as they attempt to escape. Sanji is tasked with preparing a new wedding cake with the help of Tato Land's chefs. To aid their escape, Pedro sacrifices himself, causing a massive explosion. With Brook's assistance, Luffy enters the Dimension of Mirrors and fights Katakuri, Big Mom's strongest commander, while the others are still pursued by her. After a long and grueling battle, Luffy defeats Katakuri. Big Mom eats the cake, but she doesn't stop targeting the Straw Hats. However, they manage to escape because Jinbei, his companions, and the Tato Land chefs remain behind to keep her occupied. Sanji is safely returned to the crew, and his bounty is raised to 330 million berries, while Luffy's bounty reaches 1.5 billion. Brooks successfully steals a copy of Tato Land's road poneglyph. Meanwhile, the revolutionaries regroup in Kamabaka and discuss their next move after the Blackbeard pirates destroyed their base in Baltigo. They prepare a plan to assault the Holy Land of Marijois while some commanders work to free Luluzia from the clutches of the oppressive regime. Among them are Morley, Belobeti, Lindbergh, and Karasu. At level E, several nobles, including Princess Shirahoshi, are escorted by guards. We are introduced to the third admiral in Penumbra, who now works alongside Fujitora to abolish the Seven Warlord system. It's revealed that Kuja is harboring a mole, a saboteur. While several of Luffy's friends, belonging to the nations he helped, converse, a mysterious figure inside Pangaea heads toward a secret room containing Luffy's straw hat. Inside that room stands a large throne. Meanwhile, Big Mom and Kaido argue over who must deal with Luffy, but at some point they attempt to form an alliance. News of their scuffle invades the Navy's headquarters. Inside Pangaea, we see the empty throne, which symbolizes the equality of all the world's kings. No one is allowed to sit on it. In the courtyard, Charlos attempts to kidnap Shirahoshi, but Donquixote Mjasgard intervenes, offering everything to save her, aided by Queen Otohime's sacrifice. Meanwhile, a masked figure meets secretly with Imu-sama, the mysterious ruler of the world government. It's revealed to be Shanks. At level E, there is also Bonnie, a member of the worst generation working undercover, who seems to be linked to Bartolomeo, now enslaved. Near the entrance of level E, Cobra requests an audience with Imu-sama, while others approach the empty throne. Right there, the mysterious figure who entered the secret room wearing the straw hat sits on the throne, and Imu-sama bows. There is a king above all kings, his name is Imu-sama, and he is about to issue the next Buster Call order. Nefertari Vivi. We move to Wano, where some of the Mugiwara have already arrived and staged a cover to gather information about the nation. Frankie poses as a carpenter, Usopp as a salesman of Ugoance, Robin as a geisha, and Zoro as a ronin. It's Zoro who first blows their cover. Meanwhile, the other Mugiwara struggle in their attempt to take over the country. Luffy, traveling through Kuri, meets Tami Itizu, a little girl and a swordsman. There, he reunites with Zoro, and together they confront Hawkins, one of Kaido's subordinates tasked with expelling intruders. The country is under the influence of Kaido and Shogun Orochi. Apart from the capital, where Orochi resides, the rest of the nation is desolate, plagued by hunger, poverty, and illness. After the fight with Hawkins, our crew is helped by Atsuru, a woman from the Forefathers era. However, the Kaido pirates arrive and attempt to abduct Tama. Zoro and Luffy follow them and break into the pirate hideout. To free Tama, they completely blow their cover, and the news reaches Law, Luffy's ally, who is fighting Hawkins. Zoro and Luffy interrupt Law's battle and take away a truck full of food stolen from Bakura, which the pirates were transporting to the city of the Forefathers. The Mugiwara regroup and are brought to the ruins of Odin's castle, where they learn that Kinemon, Momonosuke, Kanjuro, and Raizo were sent 20 years into the future by Toki, the wife of the beloved Odin. Today, they are tasked with fulfilling a prophecy to free the country from Kaido and Orochi and dismantle Wano's isolationism, alongside other loyal retainers who remained in Wano during these 2 decades. However, this can only be achieved through an alliance with pirates and Visons. Meanwhile, Kaido resides in the upper reaches of Wano, and Luffy fights him but is defeated and taken to Udon, a prison where Kid is also held. Alongside Jack, we meet Queen, King, and the Conflagration, the other 2 calamities of Kaido. The other Mugiwara reorganize and resume their cover identities, meeting Toko, the assistant of Komurasaki, the most beautiful woman in the country. Meanwhile, in Orochi's domain, the CP0 negotiates with the Shogun for the purchase of weapons. Zoro meets Tanayasu, who takes him to Ebisu, a village where the citizens always remain cheerful despite their hardships. Meanwhile, Sanji gets into a chaotic altercation with a client at Soba's restaurant and fights Pageman, a member of the Flying Six. Meanwhile, Big Mom attempts to climb the walls of Wano but is thrown down by King. Robin is discovered while investigating Orochi's affairs. Big Mom, now in Kuri Beach, has lost her memory and befriends Momonosuke, Chopper, Tama, and Kiku. Meanwhile, Orochi is followed by an aide, and Komurasaki slaps Orochi before being killed by Kyoshiro, the Shogun's subordinate. Big Mom heads to Udon, from which Kid has just escaped. To defend an old man named Yo, Luffy is sentenced to death by Queen Lepiaga. we learn that Yo is Yogoro of the Flowers, a Yakuza boss highly influential in the past. Meanwhile, Drake and Hawkins discover the Mugiwara's plan, which involves informing everyone bearing the Kozuki clan's crescent moon tattoo to start a revolt against Kaido. Additionally, they attract the pirates of the land of Hakunesu to lure Trafalgar Law. Meanwhile, Zoro defeats Kamazu, a wanted murderer, to save a woman and Toko. It's revealed that Yori is not Momonosuke's sister. Meanwhile, Tanayasu, Zoro's ally, helps reorganize the resistance. At night, Tonoyasu is captured for his repeated thefts and public disturbances. His true identity is revealed to be Lord Yasui, an ex-daimyo and father of Toko. At his execution, all the civilians laugh as defective devil fruits, those that don't work, are fed to prisoners for entertainment. Only 10% of these fruits grant powers, and those who obtain them become part of Kaido's forces. The defective fruits, out of spite, are sent to Ibukijima as food. Meanwhile, Big Mom arrives at Udon and causes chaos while fighting Queen. To save Yogoro from an explosive attack, Luffy learns an advanced technique called Ryu Wo. Luffy, Yogoro, Kiku, Raizo, and Kawamatsu, another loyal retainer, take control of Udon after Big Mom is taken to Kaido by Queen. Kaido and Big Mom form an alliance. Zoro, meanwhile, is deprived of Shusui, a national treasure of Wano, but receives a sword that once belonged to Odin. We learn what happened between Kid and his former allies. Appu betrayed them and lured Kaido to capture Kid and Killer. Hawkins, out of fear, joined Kaido's ranks. The Wara are now all free but wanted, ready to assault Onigashima with a fleet of ships obtained in the meantime. However, someone leaks the entire plan to Orochi. There is a traitor among them. Meanwhile, in the world, Morgan publishes articles that bring chaos to the Evely region, and it's revealed that Sabo has involved himself in the plot. The alliance of Kaido and Big Mom is likened to the Return of the Rocks, a group of cruel, individualist pirates erased from history due to the numerous taboos they broke in the past. Kaido, Big Mom, Whitebeard, and other menacing pirates were once led by Captain Rox D. Zebek, who sought to become the king of the world. It was the union of Garp and Roger that destroyed that gang 38 years ago in what was known as God Valley. We learn that the bounties of the Yonko exceed 4 billion berries, except for Blackbeard, and that the highest bounty in the history of piracy belongs to Roger, exceeding 5.5 billion berries, just above Whitebeard's. The Foddery make a deal with an unexpected ally. Though the port has been robbed, they still gain something valuable. A flashback reveals Kozuki Odin, the charismatic daimyo who killed the mountain god to save his country from its fury. He became the daimyo of Kuri and gave new life to criminals by making them his servants. One day, he set sail with the Whitebeard pirates, leaving Wano behind. During the journey, he met Toki and had 2 children with her, Hiyori and Momonosuke. In Wano, in Odin's absence, Orochi became the regent shogun, secretly belonging to the Kurozumi clan, enemies of the Kozuki. During his travels, Odin changed his goals and joined Roger's crew, eventually reaching Laugh-Tale. It was there that Roger saw the One Piece and laughed, renaming the island Laugh-Tale. Odin returned to Wano, following the Dome's guidance, and discovered the tyranny of Orochi and Kaido. Odin sacrificed his dignity for the safety of his people, shocking everyone. He then challenged Kaido, losing and suffering a fiery death alongside his vassals, who nevertheless managed to save him. After his death, Toki sent Kinemon, Kanjuro, Rizo, Kiku, and Momonosuke 20 years into the future so they could fulfill his prophecy. In the present, we learn that Orochi's informant is Kanjuro, a traitor to the Kozuki and a member of the Kurozumi clan. Kanjuro assaults Momonosuke and flees, but the Mugiwara arrive, and the assault on Kaido begins. Jinbei arrives from Tato Land. They are introduced to the Tobai Rappo, Ulti, Page 1, Who's Who, Drake, Black Maria, and Sasaki. The sons of Big Mom are again hindered, this time by Marco the Phoenix, who joins the Mugiwara. We meet Yamato, Kaido's daughter, who proclaims herself Kozuki Oden and vows to defeat her father and open Wano's borders. Kaido decapitates Orochi and is attacked by the Foddery. The clash on the roof intensifies, but Kaido easily defeats Inuarashi and Nekomamushi, who humiliate Jack in his Salong form. Kurozumi and Vanda face each other in the meantime, but lose. Sanji is captured in a trap set by the beautiful Black Maria, while Kaido wreaks havoc across the island using the power of his fruit. Meanwhile, on the roof, 2 squads form. On one side, Kaido and Big Mom. On the other, Luffy, Zoro, Law, and Kid. Marco holds back King, Queen, and Tama, turning the gifters into allies. On the roof, Zoro wounds Kaido with his Ashura technique, shattering his king's armor, but then Big Mom sends Kid and Killer into the castle with a powerful attack, while the latter faces Hawkins. Meanwhile, Luffy, despite discovering that Kaido's scales can be broken into pieces, is defeated by Kaido in a fierce battle and falls from Onigashima. On stage, Sanji arrives to face Queen, while Yamato holds Kaido at bay. Jinbei fights Who's Who we learn was once a government agent arrested for failing to guard the Gum Gum fruit stolen from Shanks the Red. Who's Who interrogates Jinbei about Nika, the liberator of the oppressed, but Jinbei defeats him. Frankie and Robin defeat Sasaki. Black Maria captures Zoro, but he recovers and fights against King. Meanwhile, Momonosuke uses the powers of the Shinobi Devil Fruit to quickly transport Luffy to the roof. Inuarashi and Nekomamushi defeat Perospero and Jack, while Sanji awakens latent abilities derived from the Germa lineage and defeats Queen. Zoro defeats King after revealing his origins as a Lunarian, a race now extinct due to extermination. Awa Noon mysteriously appears at Zunisha, while the Gorosei and Pangaea discuss a fruit they've tried to obtain in vain for 800 years. Meanwhile, Law and Kid defeat Big Mom, and Orochi is intercepted by Hiyori and killed by Kyoshiro, who reveals himself as Denjiro, a mole undercover. Due to the intrusion of CP0 agents, Luffy dies at Kaido's hands, but Zunisha hears the drums of liberation, reactivating Luffy's devil fruit as he wakes up. The same fruit that the Gorosei sought was the Gum Gum fruit. Its real name is the Ito Ito no Mi, model, Nika, a mythological Zoan-type fruit that grants the possessor rubber-like elasticity and the abilities of the sun god Nika, capable of creating bizarre and unpredictable transformations. Luffy starts treating Kaido as if he were a slapstick opponent, putting Kaido in trouble. After a long and grueling fight, Kaido is defeated by Luffy's ultimate technique, the Bajrang Gun. Onigashima is safe, and the citizens of the Flower Country celebrate. Kaido and Big Mom end up in the magma of Wano, which erupts and presumably kills them. The two sides fight in front of the citizens, declaring the defeat of Kaido and the arrival of the future shogun, Momonosuke. Days later, the assault on the country by Admiral Ryokugo is thwarted by Shanks, who passes through the area. Meanwhile, Luffy, Kid, and Law are assigned bounties of 3 billion berries each, and Luffy becomes the new Yonko. Tengu Yamato Tetsu reveals to Robin that Sukiyaki, Oden's father, is still alive. Robin surrenders the road poneglyph. We learn that Pluton's blueprints are located beneath the current Wano, which is, in fact, the submerged Wano of the past. What Oden meant by breaking the borders was releasing Pluton. Meanwhile, another Yonko emerges, and we learn that Ameriwar and Cobra have been killed, with the blame falling on Sabo. Luffy and the others escape, but Yamato chooses not to join the crew and stays behind to protect Wano. Luffy and Kid part ways, now enemies, and the journey continues. Doubtful of the mysterious man marked by flames, named Kid and Killer, Luffy and his crew leave Wano. News of their exploits spreads, and new bounties are issued: 1,000 berries for Chopper, 366 million for Nami, 383 million for Brook, 394 million for Frankie, 500 million for Usopp, 930 million for Robin, 1.211 billion for Zoro, 1.2 billion for Jinbei, 1.032 billion for Sanji, and 3 billion for Luffy. Meanwhile, Caribou, Mihawk, and Crocodile express frustration at being passed over as the head of the Cross Guild, despite being its founders. We learn that Crocodile's bounty is now 1.965 billion berries, while Mihawk's is 3.59 billion. But the new Yonko includes Blackbeard, whose bounty is 3.189 billion. Meanwhile, Sabo contacts the revolutionaries. A few weeks earlier, Teach attacked Mazulai and reached a stalemate with Boa Hancock, but to settle the situation, Rayleigh intervened. Not wanting to leave empty-handed, Teach took Captain Kobe, who volunteered to save his men. While Luffy reveals his dream to his companions, the nation of Luluzia is polluted by a mysterious force in order to summon Imu-sama. Luffy, Jinbei, Chopper, and Bonnie, meanwhile, are talking to Robin. Shaka reveals that the technology of Egghead is not far removed from that of the ancients, and that the will of Ohara still endures because the books of the Unishin tree were left in the lake. 22 years ago, Egghead came into conflict with Dragon, the leader of the Revolutionary Army. The scientist joined the world government because they offered the necessary funds for his research, despite Dragon having previously extended an invitation to collaborate. It was after the events of Ohara that Dragon founded the Revolutionary Army alongside Kuma and Ivankov. Vegapunk later traveled to Elbaf because it was there that the giants had brought all the books of Ohara after recovering them from the lake. There, he met Obey's soul, who we now know was still alive and had read every book. Meanwhile, Luffy's crew encounters the real Dr. Vegapunk, who reveals that he consumed the Nomi Nomi Nomi, a devil fruit that allows him to store an unlimited amount of information in his brain, which continues to expand. For this reason, he created the Punk Records, the highest section of his laboratory, which functions as a massive data repository. The scientist then provides information about a robot that seems to have attacked Mary Geoise 200 years ago. Vegapunk is under the world government's control for attempting to study the energy that powered that robot, and that is why he now asks Luffy to help him escape the island. Meanwhile, Bartholomew Kuma escapes from Kamabaka Kingdom. We discover Vegapunk's dream: to make energy free and available to everyone around the world, so that wars over resources can be eliminated. However, the CP0 begins to cause trouble, and Luffy rushes to use Gear 5th to fight them. Meanwhile, Admiral Kizaru appears, intent on eliminating Vegapunk. Stussy betrays the CP0 and reveals herself as an ally of Vegapunk, being a clone created by him. She is the clone of the former Pirate of the Rocks, Miss Buckingham Stussy. In Sphinx, Bakken, Weevil's father, asks Marco why his son was kidnapped by Ryokogu, while we learn that even Saturn is clashing with Kizaru. Meanwhile, Bonnie delves into her father's memories, secretly accessing the Vagabond Bank. At the same time, we discover that Vivi is still alive, thanks to journalist Morgans. However, someone on Egghead Island is manipulating the security systems. The traitor of the island rapes Vagabond Bank and kills Shaka. The culprit is York, the sixth punk, who has signed an agreement with the world government to become a celestial dragon in exchange for handing over the scientist. Meanwhile, Kid's crew arrives from Elbaf but is utterly annihilated by Shanks and his gang. In the New World, Garp and some sword agents head to Asanosa to save Kobe. Garp meets Kuzan, who we now know joined Blackbeard after the events of Punk Hazard, becoming the 10th member of his crew. On Winter Island, the Heart Pirates are defeated, and Law is captured by Beppo. In Karai Bari, we learn that Crocodile and Mihawk want to create an impenetrable alliance, but Buggy wants the One Piece. It's also revealed that in the past, Buggy was disappointed when Shanks stopped chasing Roger temporarily. In Kamabaka Kingdom, Sabo recounts what happened on the day of the Leavely. The army arrived to create chaos, and we learn the contents of the private conversation between King Cobra and others. Cobra had asked them for information about Queen Lily of Alabasta, a figure from 800 years ago, and about the D. However, Im grew angry, sitting on the empty throne and explaining that Queen Lily made the grave mistake of spreading the poneglyphs during the Void Century. After that, Cobra urged Sabo to help him. Cobra also claimed that Im belongs to the Naren family. The two tried to escape, but at some point, Cobra sacrificed himself to ensure Luffy's escape, leaving behind a message for him and his daughter, as the Nefertari family also carries the D. Sabo manages to escape, just like Bonnie, and she too infiltrates the situation that day. We then learn the identities of the Gorosei: J. Garcia Saturn, Marcus Mars, Topman Workery, Ethan Barron, Vinny U.S. Juro, and Shepard Jupiter, warriors representing science, environment, justice, and agriculture. Im orders them to find Vivi, and it was on that day that the destruction of Luluzia occurred through the Mother Flame, a weapon invented by Vegapunk. Meanwhile, in Mary Geoise, Garling for Garland, God Valley's celestial justice publicly denies Asgard's claims of aiding the pirates who abused Charles. At Asanosa, Sengoku manages to hold out against Guzane and the other commanders of Teach's crew, but in the end, he is captured while still trying to rescue Kobe and the others. At Egghead, the Mugiwara crew manages to steal York. They devise a plan to flee the island, but the Navy and Kizaru, after defeating Senamaru, begin to fight Luffy. Their priorities are threefold: protecting the Punk Records, killing Vegapunk, and saving York. In reality, the Mother Flame is not the weapon used to defeat Luluzia, but rather the energy source that powers it. Kuma arrives at Marawai and manages to overcome the obstacles set by Kanos once again, while Adegad makes his appearance on the path to Saturn, transforming into a strange, infernal form resembling a demonic Luffy. Temporarily knocked out after defeating Kizaru, Bonnie attacks him, accusing him of killing her father. This triggers Kuma's flashback. 47 years ago, Kuma was in Sorbet and was imprisoned with his parents for being part of the Bucanieri. His parents died, and he was transferred to Gadvale during the triennial hunting event, a sadistic practice of the celestial dragons that involved treating natives of an island as mere game under the guise of sport. Kuma became the prize of the tournament, and among the participants was a young Garling Fagarland. Kuma later met Ivankov and Ginny, and the three managed to escape thanks to the chaos caused by the arrival of the Rocks pirates, led by Roger. They escaped to Sorbet thanks to the powers of the pawpaw fruit eaten by Kuma, but Ivankov set off on his own journey, leaving Kuma and Ginny in Sorbet. The two worked together until they rebelled against the tyrant king of the nation, King Beccari, eventually joining Dragon and Ivankov in the Revolutionary Army. But 14 years ago, Ginny was kidnapped by a celestial dragon who wanted to marry her, and after 2 years, she was pursued by the Holy Land along with her little girl, Bonnie, both suffering from a rare illness. Bonnie is 12 years old and is the biological daughter of a celestial dragon. Ginny dies in Sorbet, and Kuma leaves the army to care for Bonnie, who contracted the same disease as her mother, the Zafiro disease, a condition triggered by exposure to natural light. Well, kids, the video ends here. We hope you liked it. If so, we invite you to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Don't forget to hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next videos. Bye.